welcome back to another episode of Ladies in Red. I am Phoebe here with Sydney and Kristen. And with today's episode, we're going to be talking about women in coaching positions. And we have a really special guest today, Katie McArdle, who is recently named the head men's and women's Dickinson swim coach back in April of 2020. And she is a recent alum from Messiah College, graduated in 2018. And she was a very successful swimmer with a lot of experience. She actually held 4 Middle Atlantic Conference championships while at Messiah, along with many other accolades.
Yeah, we're super excited to have her on this podcast just because she has entered this role at such a, odd time. And I think she has done a successful job in this position. While at Messiah, she earned back Rookie of the Year honors in 2015 and Swimmer of the Year honors in both 2017 and 2018. She specialized in the sprint, freestyle, and individual medley. She swam to 25 MAC titles and 5 NCAA B cuts. So she ultimately became the first Falcon swimmer to earn a berth to NCAA championships in 2017, which is really awesome. She's a 2-time Elite 90 recipient, a 2-time Academic All-American, and a 2018 MAC nominee for NCAA Woman of the Year, which we love. So we're super excited to talk to her about all these accolades and what she's done at Dickinson.
And also, she just graduated in 2018, like that's not that long ago, which is actually when she began her collegiate coaching career right after graduation as an assistant coach at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And yeah, again, she's just like going to be a cool guest to have on for this episode, and we'll be discussing her transition into a coaching role during the COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, be really hard, as well as how she has established connections with her team this past year and much more. And then after that, we'll go into some other notable women who have been hired as coaches for professional and elite teams and how their ascension has changed the way people view women in sports.
Yeah, and before we start everything off, we're going to just give some updates about women in sports like we like to do. The first one on our list is a really cool media site that was created by 4 really renowned athletes: Alex Morgan, Chloe Kim, Simone Manuel, and Sue Bird. And it's called Together, but the second E is an X. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I've been calling it Together. And they basically are doing this to give women a voice and a platform to speak on. And they are centering it around sports, but also letting it kind of take its course and see what happens.
Yeah, I think this goes along with a lot of the foundations we talked about in a previous episode that are just supporting women. And I think these women are awesome. I know Alex Morgan is someone who everyone looks up to regardless of their sport. She's a crazy athlete. So I think it's super awesome that she's doing this alongside other women and just giving women a place in sports as well as other areas.
Yeah, I know. I saw this was popping up on like my social media platforms. There was like an ad for it on my Facebook and my Instagram and stuff. So it's really cool to see that, especially led by all these different athletes.
Yeah, it's really cool that they're really emphasizing the many roles women hold, because not only are they female athletes, but they also are moms and they have other jobs and other companies that they're running, or maybe a promotion that they're doing. So they are very much multitasking, and this is kind of emphasizing that and bringing light and giving them a way to have a voice and to feature them on this site and stuff. So it's really cool. And our second update is actually on International Women's Day, which was last Monday. A new sports agency was launched. It's called the Clarion Agency, and it is basically an agency. The goal is an agency dedicated to women. And the founder, Erin Kane, she was a sports agent at another agency called Octagon, but she decided that she wanted to kind of break away from that and really create a space for women by women type of thing like that. So that's why she decided to launch her own agency.
Yeah, I know Octagon is like a pretty big company. I think they have like offices. I think there's one in Connecticut. I'm not really sure, but I know there's one in the city. So having her like step away from a big company and creating this is really intriguing.
Yeah, I think one major thing we've talked about and overarching theme throughout this podcast is representing women in a place of power. And I think this is a great example of, you know, an agency or a business choosing specifically to represent women and give them more representation. You know, because women are underrepresented in the sports industry, and, you know, maybe some agents would think, I'm not going to represent a woman because, you know, she's not going to make as much money or whatever. And I think that's super awesome that this agency is specifically dedicated to women, because I think it just gives them more of a platform as athletes.
Why cut your portions down? When you are hungry, you want something that is filling and delicious, right? Well, Spoon's Cafe believes in cutting the chemicals, not the portions. Located at 57 West Pomfret Street in downtown Carlisle, Spoon's offers great sandwiches, salads, and soups that are tasty and good for you and will fill you right up. Stop cutting down on the size of your lunch and instead get a delicious, filling lunch today at Spoon's Cafe. Open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Spoons is the perfect spot to enjoy a great tasting lunch today.
All right, Red Devils are back here, and we're going to be interviewing Katie McArdle, who is the head women's and men's swimming coach here at Dickinson. We're super excited to have her on. So welcome, Katie.
Thanks so much for having me, ladies.
Yeah, so we're basically just going to be asking her a bunch of questions. So the first question we have is, what drew you to Dickinson as an institution and the swim program?
Yeah, so my dad is a Dickinson alum, class of 85. So there's a family tie there, and my parents met at the law school, so major family tie. But I would say Dickinson as an institution, I just love that it's a place where students are challenged to be the best possible intellectuals, but also agents of change. I love that those two things go together, that it's not just about being in our ivory tower, but that we challenge students to kind of put into action everything that they're learning and really apply it and figure out what problems the world has and how we can solve them. So that's a big part of what drew me to Dickinson. And, you know, the swim program is a really exciting program to be joining. Came here as an assistant coach, knowing the incredible legacy of Coach Richards, and was really excited to work under him and see what he had built through 26 years here. And just a phenomenal program, a phenomenal family environment and alumni base, and was really fortunate to be able to step into this role as head coach, and really looking forward to taking the program in, you know, a strong forward direction with that as the foundation. There's nothing harder than stepping into a position after someone's done a phenomenal job for 26 years before you. But it's a really exciting program. That's a really strong program to get to join. So
Yeah, that's definitely really cool, especially all the different attributes you mentioned are kind of similar to like why I chose Dickinson. Like you mentioned, like the community and just like the challenging ourselves and kind of working on problem solving. I know that the liberal arts concept is just something that's really cool. And then you add student athlete on top of that, and you are very well rounded. So I feel like that's what drew me here too. So that's cool to hear, definitely. And I look forward to seeing what you have in store for the swim team. I know it's definitely hard to kind of step in during this time. So how do you think that your transition to the role was affected by the pandemic in the past year?
yeah, I think in number one, in a sport that's very data driven, to have no data and no chances to say what's working well, what's not working well in terms of kind of very quantitative data when we're in a sport that we're used to constantly getting feedback, coaches and athletes themselves, that's a challenge. And then just building relationships from a distance is a real challenge when, you know, some of our first years, I never had the chance to meet throughout their recruiting process. So getting to know them over Zoom and over the phone was a challenge, and definitely one that we didn't anticipate stepping into this role, but the pandemic kind of brought that to the table. And then how do we bring everybody together and bring everybody around a common purpose without competition and without that very tangible goal that we're working toward? Challenges that are exciting to face, and I think ones that I hope I was uniquely prepared to guide our program through, but certainly very impacted by the pandemic.
Yeah, I know. Just like coming from a player perspective too, from like a spring sport, I play softball. So we talk about it all the time, like how we didn't really know the freshmen this fall. And normally like we have that whole semester to get to know each other. And like also we have our short fall season, but then after that we can like hang out more and stuff like that. And we kind of just like came back to campus and jumped right into it without knowing one another, which definitely makes it difficult. So I can only imagine it coming from like a coaching perspective.
Yeah, we're fortunate that we have really strong leaders on our team and had a really strong senior class, still do. And they did such a good job of reaching out really intentionally to our first years and bringing them into the culture and bringing them into some of our traditions and making time to do that in our first couple weeks here on campus, which has been crucial to any success we've had up to this point. And also just we set up a mentoring program that we've never kind of had before in recent past, and that was crucial. But all that's student athlete driven. And so I think everyone says, what do you as coach do? It's really giving nudges to other people and saying, absolutely step up to the plate. You have real skills and a real passion for this. Go do it, go lead. So we're fortunate that we've had a great group of athletes who were ready to embrace that challenge. So we're in a good spot, thankfully, despite all of those challenges.
Yeah, I think one major thing about this time is just trying to motivate people and motivate players. And I think, like you said, your team has done a really good job of motivating themselves. What would you say your coaching motto is, or words to live by that help motivates your team the most, especially during these difficult times?
Yeah, I was just thinking the other day, I need to share this with my team, but I wanted to share it at the right time. I had a long-term mentor from the time, gosh, I was 5 years old, through kind of May of 2020. So mid-pandemic, one of my swim coaches who was a mentor throughout my time as an athlete, but then as a coach, he passed away in a nursing home, sadly, not due to COVID, but certainly as kind of a byproduct of the pandemic. And he told me in one of my last conversations with him in the memory care unit in the nursing home, I said, tell me the most important thing about the sport of swimming. And instead of telling me the most important thing about the sport of swimming, he said, the sport of swimming has been good to me. And that has stuck with me. And I think that sums up kind of what I live by and what I coach by, that I've been given so much by this sport. And I know our athletes have been given so much by the sport too. And our job is to be grateful for that and then to give back to it. So our number one goal for anybody that comes through our program is that they love swimming more by the time they graduate than when they come in. And that means being successful and getting better, getting faster. It's fun to win. It's fun to be successful. But it also means recognizing in the scheme of things what's important in life and what matters about this sport. And for many of us is the joy that comes from getting in the water with some of our best friends. So that's it. The sport of swimming has been good to me.
I think that's something we've talked about that a decent amount, I feel like, throughout like our episodes, just of like giving back to something that's given you so much. Like it might not seem like a big deal, but if you think about it, like some of your best friends, like you just said, are made from the sports that you play from an early age on, even to like the college level. And then they just give you that extra opportunity aside from just coming to college and taking classes, but to do something else outside of that. Which I think is like really important and definitely helps shape us as individuals outside of school once we graduate.
Absolutely. That's part of the beauty of Division III, right? That we get to embrace all of that. That's why D3, it's that we get to be whole people and celebrate each of those components of our experience on the field, off the field, in the classroom, just hanging out on campus. It's all important. So yeah, absolutely agree, Kristen.
Yeah, that's an awesome motto. We talked about it in our last episode, I believe, too, or maybe two ago, about like what our sports have kind of taught us, and it's just an ongoing thing that sports just do give so much. So we try to give back to that and see what we can get out of it as well. So it's definitely something that we've talked about, and I like to keep in my mind as well, because we all know we've all been playing our sports for basically our whole lives, and it's just like you said, like with your best friends, learning so many lessons and everything. It's such a good outlook to have, to kind of be very grateful of what you have gotten with the opportunity of playing sports and stuff throughout your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just another question. What is your overall goal for this season, and what are your current plans for practices and competitions?
Yeah, so interesting times to have a season, and what we call this year, language is everything. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us to build culture and start developing a program. So that's the number one goal, is that we care about each other more and that we really understand the nuts and bolts of our sport and teach and learn. And that goes both ways, athletes teaching us teaching athletes, learning from each other. Those are kind of the big things for us right now. In terms of competition, we'll definitely do some stuff inter squad. And we're kind of looking ahead to doing that within the next 10 days, maybe 14. We're just seeing how everybody does in response to everything. It's very responsive right now, getting everybody back into it. But other than that, we're holding tight and we're waiting for next fall when we'll definitely get to hit the pool again and compete, which will be really exciting. Our first meet will be October 23rd. Not that I'm counting down, but we're really excited to have that opportunity to compete. And I think this has been such a gift for us, not having competition. I see it as a real opportunity in my first year to be able to take the time to really focus on some really small things that we typically don't have the time to focus on in a competitive season. And for good reason. There's a limited number of weeks that we have, and that's a good thing. But now being able to really dig into technique, dig into how we do things as a program and what the expectations are in terms of little tiny nitty gritty things, it's just going to be able to be a much smoother process. We'll hit the ground running or swimming, I guess would be the right metaphor, in the fall. So we're enjoying it and pushing toward that goal of getting closer together and being students of the sport. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Sid.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying kind of goes along with what we talked about with the head women's lacrosse coach a few weeks ago, Kim Acemore. And like, one of my favorite things that she said was just she hopes that her team can roll with the punches. And I think what you said is like a great example of that, like taking every opportunity you're given this season and working on technique or whatever. And I think that's one big thing. And I think the pandemic has made people stronger because you're just you're able to solve problems more easily and take advantage of every moment and be grateful to be able to get in the pool when you can or compete against your teammates. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you all are such a resilient bunch. We've learned so much from you as coaches this year and seeing the ways that you've handled this. But I think the sense of gratitude that everyone had coming into this spring semester where we could all finally be back on campus, or just about all of us, was really incredible. And it's really just keeping that sense of gratitude day by day, even when, the papers stack up and the practices get harder and yardage gets longer. It's saying, wow, I get to be here. And a few months ago, I didn't know if I was ever going to get to be here again. And I didn't know if I was going to be surrounded by these teammates or be on deck holding this practice as a coach and actually getting to teach in that give and take sort of way. So yeah, gratitude is everything. And we've learned that from you all.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of the same thing. Like, I feel like, I know Phoebe, like your last season was taken away from you, which is like really sad. And I think that like this whole pandemic thing has just made us be that much more grateful for having four really short years here at school. And it's sad when your last one's taken away from you, because it's just like that last year's extra special in its own little way, because who knows if you're ever going to play again. So
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, anything that I think that anything in the past year has kind of taught us two things that were both touched on: that don't take anything for granted and make the best out of any situation, which basically sums up everything with basically being grateful every day and kind of working with what you have, which I think that all of our teams have experienced, that taking this time to build the team culture, to build the foundations and do stuff like that we might not have had time to in our competitive seasons, that we're trying to just make the best of the time that we have, because we may not be able to in the past months been able to get on the field together, for example, but we had Zoom chats and various mentor programs and stuff like that. So I think it's really cool to see all of our teams in their respective groups kind of, but we're all kind of along the same lines of as a whole working to make the best of it and to make sure when we are allowed to get back out there to not take anything for granted.
Yeah, mad respect for you seniors. You've done the hardest work, but yeah, it's the time that you invested for those years that you were able to have that experience you thought you'd have. It's not wasted time. It's time that makes the sport even more special and your experience more special.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can just end it with one last question. Do you feel that, or what have been some of the biggest challenges, successes that you faced while becoming the new coach and kind of stepping into this new position?
Yeah, I think kind of like I mentioned before, two biggest challenges, I would say just, forging an identity for the program and for myself in this role as coach, and certainly having similarities with the prior coach who was fantastic and is fantastic. He continues to live on in Carlisle and in the Dickinson community, and honoring that legacy and also forging that path of here's where we're headed as a program and here's exactly how we're going to build on the past. And that may mean some differences from what we've done before, and that's okay. And that may mean differences in relationships between coaches and swimmers. And some of that is hard and some of that might feel good, and we'll navigate that together. And then the second would just be that piece of, being in a pandemic and finding ways to connect with folks without having that chance to dynamically coach and learn together on deck, off deck during the fall semester. But I think on the flip side, we came together as a team in a way that I don't think we would have had we not had the pandemic. And I think that's not due to me at all. That's due to who we have, the wonderful student athletes that I'm privileged to get to lead, that they said, we can take this as something happening to us, or we can take this as something that's going to make us all the better and make our program stronger. And that's what they've chosen to do, even though it's really hard every day. And that's been a success for us, that we're in a solid place and we're moving forward culturally, and we're willing to say that this is now a part of our experience, I think. And number two, I would say that time in the fall didn't go wasted. I was able to meet one-on-one with each of my student athletes every other week. And that was a lot of time that we spent on Zoom together, but time that I hope was not wasted and was really important for both parties, coach and athletes, to get to really talk about life and talk about school and mental health and families, and share and be vulnerable and kind of live in that moment together. And I think that makes us, hopefully when we're on deck doing really hard swim sets in the pool, see not just those incredible athletic bodies executing, but see the human beings that go with those bodies, and see, oh, so-and-so is having a great day, and this is where they're at in their journey. And so-and-so is having a tough day, but here's where we know they're at in their journey. And I think that makes hopefully all of us better. And hopefully it means that they're able to see us as coaches as accessible and relatable, and not just kind of at the top of a hierarchy, but really someone to support and hopefully learn and teach together collaboratively throughout the experience. So grateful for the pandemic at the end of the day. Tough, very hard, but I think it really hopefully has brought with it some great challenges in this first year for me as head coach.
Yeah, I think you're super lucky just because the previous swim coach paved such a great path for you to follow through with. And I think, like you said, it has been so hard for people to stay connected, but I think the power of technology has really changed the way. I mean, if this was like 10 years ago, things would be so different during this pandemic. But I mean, one of the big things is just keeping in touch with your athletes. And I think they really value, not just getting on a Zoom and talking about swim the whole time, like getting on a Zoom and actually talking about life and what's going on, and like developing that meaningful relationship and connection. I think that will definitely benefit in the future, when you guys do have a season, or even this season when you can just practice together and be together. I think that's super important way to start a coaching career.
Yeah, we hope so. We hope so. And we hope, 10 years from now, we're able to look back and say, here were the challenges, here were the successes. Right now we're in the mud. And so we're able to get glimpses, but yeah, let's follow up in 10 years. We'll see all of you out successful in the world, and we'll have a little heart to heart then and see where we're at. But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope everyone did too. And we are really excited to see the successes of the swim team in the future, hopefully very soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me on, ladies. Wish you the best and love that you're doing this. It's just an awesome podcast and really have enjoyed listening in here and there and look forward to listening in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're back. We just had our interview with Coach Katie McArdle. She was really fun to talk to. She offered a lot of interesting insight, definitely from a new head coach, especially coming into a position during the pandemic. I know it was really cool to see that she mentioned some family ties to Dickinson. So it definitely probably helped her make the decision of where to come to. But now we're going to talk about some other female coaches that have been hired for professional and well-known teams. So first, we're just going to talk about Alyssa Nakin, who is the MLB's first full-time woman coach for the San Francisco Giants. And actually her uniform is hung in Cooperstown, which is like huge at the Baseball Hall of Fame. And it's interesting because Babe Ruth's jersey is also hung there. So that just goes to show how like important Cooperstown is and how much of a memorial it is. And however, the jersey that Babe Ruth's jersey that's there was actually never worn in an official game. But again, he's just like an absolute legend. Everyone knows who he is. So it's cool to see that her jersey is hung in the same place as his. And I know just like coming from things that we've talked about in previous episodes, like with Naomi Osaka, how she was talking about how one day she hoped that like she could compete against like her fans and stuff like that because she was able to do so. And Alyssa Nakin kind of said a similar thing. She said there are so many girls, young girls especially out there, that are now able to see so many other possibilities that, you know, when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, I didn't know existed at all. And I think that just goes to show that like all these opportunities are starting to come out for females at all different ages, and just goes to show like she's a head coach for a major league baseball team, and that's just a huge role. And obviously everyone knows who the San Francisco Giants are. So it's like she's filling a big shoes by doing so.
Yeah, this is just another example of like how we're making so much progress in the representation of women in sports. Like she mentioned in that quote that you listed, that like she didn't know that that was possible, or that little girls now are going to be able to see her in that position. And also like the tidbit about her uniform being hung in the Hall of Fame, like that is so cool that when people go to the Hall of Fame or see Babe Ruth's jersey in the Hall of Fame, like hers is there too. Like what an honor and what a cool thing to have being done. And yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think it's super awesome. And I just love seeing women taking roles, coaching positions on male teams. And I think it's really awesome. And, you know, like we said before, just kind of proves that women can be in a position of power and do it successfully. And I think her making these strides, as was said, like these possibilities that she's showing little girls, that it is, they are capable of doing these things, and they are able to, you know, hold positions in that of power above men, or be equal to men in that case, which I think is super awesome.
Yeah, and like I know she mentioned how people can potentially be timid stepping into like these large roles for all these large professional sports teams, even just like business companies in general. And I think that once like one female steps into that role, like then it's kind of like a snowball effect where more and more women are stepping into these positions, and then more people want to step into them and are less like reluctant to kind of hold back and say like, oh, that's typically like a position held by a male. But like now everyone's, I feel like, saying like, no, now I can do it too.
Definitely. And I think this kind of goes along with someone we also talked about a few episodes ago. Bianca Smith is the first Black Red Sox female coach, which is a minor league team, but also a major team. And she also said, Bianca Smith said, that I think it's a great opportunity also to kind of inspire other women who are interested in this game. This is not really something I thought about when I was younger. I kind of fell into being an athlete. So I'm excited to get the chance to show what I can do. And I think this just proves that people are looking up to her as a leader, a female leader, and putting her on the same level as males in the industry as well.
Yeah, and seeing that her background in the biomechanical and analytics side of baseball kind of shows that like anybody can work hard enough to earn these roles, that you don't have to have played the sport your entire life or have had X amount of experience playing the sport. Like, you can study it and you can learn so much about it and still be very knowledgeable and be able to coach and do things like that. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's really cool to see these women coaching these male dominated leagues, because it shows that, one, we've had men coaching in female dominated leagues and stuff, for example, like field hockey or softball or something like that. So it's cool to see the roles reversed, because it is true that there is really no difference between the two, that it's equal and it's kind of a shared, it could go either way. So I think it's really cool to just keep seeing this representation, that every time we have a new update with a new woman in a coaching position, it just adds that one more until we can kind of flatten the playing field a little bit. And yeah.
Yeah, and also like this relates to Coach McArdle too, because we were kind of talking about like how sports give you opportunities and stuff like that, kind of like opens the door for more paths we can take. And I think that Bianca Smith, by saying like she kind of just like fell into being an athlete, well, like in the long run, like being an athlete could have given her this opportunity to be a coach on the Red Sox team. So that's really cool, I think, as well. And I know, like, Phoebe, you talking about like the roles reversed, how like we've seen like a lot of male coaches and like female dominant roles and vice versa. And I know, like, me growing up, I've had a few female coaches, but I think like the more I think about it, I've had more male coaches coaching like third base, first base, like keeping score, stuff like that, like the major parts of the team. So it's just interesting to see that as well, I think, too.
Yeah, I think a lot of this relates to what we talked about with Coach McArdle, about how, you know, she's stepping into a role that a male held for so long and paved such a clear path for her to take on. I think it almost makes it easy, but I also think her stepping in and being successful just proves that, you know, culture doesn't fade away. I think culture can be created by any gender, or culture doesn't matter who the coach is. I mean, it does, like, in developing the culture, but once that culture is developed, I feel like players will follow it and will respect their coach. And I think she coached as an assistant under the previous coach, and I think that helped. But her taking this really powerful role as head coach, you know, really just like we were saying, just kind of goes to the fact that she can hold the same standard as a male coach, especially at Dickinson and for both the men's and women's swim teams.
Yeah, it's definitely awesome, as we've mentioned before, to see this, and especially something so close to home, that it's happening in our own school and stuff like that. And just another addition to seeing females kind of in the leadership position, Kim, I don't know how to pronounce it, NG. She is the general manager for the Marlins, and this is a historic hire for the MLB and just like the rest of the professional sports landscape, just because, again, another female in a high up position that unfortunately we don't see that often. So it is exciting when we do see that, but hopefully in the future, with all of these women getting these positions and stepping up to the plate, that it'll start to be the norm and it'll start to just be kind of everyday news. But for now, it's definitely exciting news.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, I don't know if many people know about this, but I think Kim Eng, was like kind of helped build the foundation for females taking on these coaching positions, because in 1991 she was hired to be on the White Sox staff, and then by 1995 she was actually the club's assistant director of baseball operations, and I believe she remained with them for a couple of years. I think was there with like 5 years total, which is when she started working for the American League as director of waivers and records, approving transactions, and helping with the application. So she was kind of given a bunch of roles, and like she was like, yes, I'm capable of doing this. Like, I can do whatever task you throw my way. So I think she kind of, because that was so early on, not super early on, but a couple of years ago, when she kind of like helped build that.
Yeah, I think it also in 1995, she was the first woman and youngest person to present a salary arbitration case. I think this is really awesome because we've talked about this before too, women being more powerful and demanding more of themselves and demanding more money. And I think it's really awesome that she was the first woman and see how successful she was in this case.
Yeah, definitely. Aside from this, I had like this pet sitting job this past summer. And the owner, she worked for like Indeed, and she was like a part of the interview process where she would like help people find jobs kind of. And she always talked about how when she would ask about like desired salaries and stuff like that, like the men were more likely to give a higher number and females are more likely to be like, oh, like whatever works for you, like that kind of thing. Like they were more satisfied with like a lower amount, whereas males would be like, no, like I want more. But I think we're starting to see more females pushing for that.
Yeah, I think across the board, we just see kind of the double standard or just the different expectations, whether it's on the employer side or the employee side. Not even gonna get into the wage gap, but just things like I see like I don't want to call it like a trend, but like it's going around social media where apparently like when writing emails, women tend to like use more exclamation points and be more like I guess like bubbly in their thing. So like it was like I remember seeing a post of a girl being like me erasing all of my exclamation points so I don't seem like I am a female from this email, which like yes, she made it into a joke, but also like why is that a thing? Like that shouldn't be a thing, you know? And then I was like, why I didn't even know that existed, that double standard slash like just that little tiny thing that I feel like there's a lot of those in the workplace and like in society in general that they don't really make sense. But it is a thing. But I do agree that we're kind of moving in the right direction. We're becoming more progressive and um, kind of destroying those stereotypes because there shouldn't really be a difference because we can do anything that a man can do. So I think that all of these strides that we're seeing in sports and out of sports are really huge just for women as a whole, that we are starting to use our voice and starting to take back what is rightfully ours.
Yeah, this reminds me because I was networking and I was talking to someone from a company whose company has like a women in the company's name, whatever. It's like a, kind of like a club, like women and whatever. And they said that they bring in people who actually do research on how to write job descriptions so that women are more inclined to apply, because apparently the way that some employers or businesses write job descriptions, they word it in a way that it like detracts what I don't even know if that's word, like makes women feel like they shouldn't apply for it because they're not qualified enough, whereas a man would just like apply to it no matter what. So this company like has literally hires these people to come in and train their like HR people how to write job descriptions so that women feel like they're qualified enough to apply, and like that helps with gender equality in the workplace and everything. So I think on the business side it's really interesting that people are recognizing it and doing things like that. And I think sometimes something as little just as like the wording can stray a woman away from applying for the job because like they think, oh, like I could never be the boss or I could never hold a high position like that. And I think that rewording it in such a way that makes them feel like they can is super important. And I think it will bring in more diversity and inclusion to women in the workplace.
Yeah, I think it's definitely really important to note that at least although there are those stereotypes and those double standards, at least people are aware of it now. 10 years ago, they might have just been oblivious to it or pretended not to see it or denied it. But at least nowadays, we are aware of what's happening and able to kind of know that and work around that and work to fix that double standard and stuff like that. So definitely see progress seeing these women in higher positions because obviously then they have the power to kind of encourage more females to maybe apply for that job or to work towards what they're doing. So I think all in all it's a very inspiring thing to see these women in coaching jobs and taking over and following in the footsteps of men or stepping into these positions coaching men. Definitely something worthwhile, something to look up to. So I think that wraps up this episode. And we thank everyone for tuning in, and we look forward to talking to you next week.